Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today on this Thursday afternoon, this champion afternoon, I am joined by John Paul Mason to talk all things Celtic. We'll be here for about an hour, and we'll be welcoming the comments from all the different platforms, from YouTube to Twitch to Facebook, LinkedIn, and even Instagram and Twitter. Get involved. Let us know your thoughts. Wasn't just a win, isn't just a title win, JP. It's about the whole story leading up to it. And I was watching an interview, the Celtic TV interview after the game with Brendan Rodgers, and he was talking about simple things that actually, they speak to me, because it took the team to see Mill Hydro, JP, before the game. Took them to see Mill Hydro. And I mean, I never heard anything about that leading up to the game. I never heard anybody chatting about it on the socials or the comments. Now, for maybe some of the younger viewers, that means nothing, JP. But he was talking about when he was a kid and what he always remembered. And it was Jockstein that introduced it. He would take the team down to Seymour Hydro to prepare for the big matches. When did it stop? Was it Liam Brady that stopped it, perhaps?
I wasn't aware that it was a tradition that continued. I knew that it happened in '88 because it's in the video, isn't it? And they get interviewed before the Scottish Cup final and stuff. But
That's right. So Big Billy continued it, didn't he? He continued it. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing Davy Hay did, and then Billy comes back and he continues it again. Mm-hmm. But I can't remember it post Billy McNeil. So it must have been like the Liam Brady time. Maybe Liam.
Well, let's be fair. We didn't have many big games to prepare for, did we?
That's true. That is true. I would have thought Lou McCarry would have been interested in doing it, because that's his neck of the woods, Anyway, I loved that. And he spoke about Tommy Burns as well. JP, talk to me about last night. Let's look at the game first, and then we'll look at the season as a whole. And then we'll maybe even have the audacity to look into the future and say what's next for the Celtic side. So what about yesterday? How did you enjoy that?
I mean, I had to sort of come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to be there, which was sore. It was not because I couldn't get a ticket. I actually had a ticket if I wanted it, and I just couldn't get the day off work. So it was one of those moments in life where you have to prepare otherwise. So took this very computer into work, into Tuts last night, and had it on in the office, so I was able to see the majority of the game. And what a start, with just coming out of the trap so quickly against them, especially after I wasn't at the league game away, but I was at the cup game away, and I was obviously at Celtic Park when they got that last minute equaliser, which was as almost as troublesome as the Hearts defeat at home, when you consider the impact that it had at that time and everything else. It was the negativity around that time was unbelievable. You just had a few. As soon as I saw Ida in the lineup, I was like, "Oh, aye, what's this?" Because I just thought he's obviously decided to do that as a bit of a curveball, and I had a feeling that he might do something different last night. I didn't know it was going to be that, but I expected to see one or two surprises in the lineup last night, just with an eye on the cup final, maybe with an eye on Saturday. I think he obviously trusts Ida to start a game, which is good, because it means that he's got faith in the guy, and maybe that points to a longer term stay for him. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Starting him in a game of that magnitude is, you're putting a lot of faith in the guy, and he rewarded it straight away. What a finish! What a ball from Matt O'Reilly, and just an absolute deadly striker's finish. Yeah. And that set us on our way to break the deadlock so soon in the game. Just puts Kilmarnock's game plan to bed, and then allows us to really motor, and Maeda flying. The guy's full of confidence. I actually was thinking back to when we signed him, everything that I'd read, everything that I'd heard from Liam Carrigan, and the stats, his previous season, I put a tweet saying potentially the best January signing ever, and I was like bookmarked, And I don't know how you could argue with that. I mean, there's a strong argument for him to be one of the best signings we've ever made in terms of what he's contributed and
what it cost. £1.5 million.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, JP.
I mean, the sheer fact that there's a player in our opposition who will genuinely be fearful of coming up against him again in the final, no doubt about it. And you hear so many of their fans going, well, how did they get this guy? How do we not get guys like this? And the fact is that when we signed Japanese players, they were mocked by large quarters of Scotland and certainly them anyway, racist comments, things like that.
Oh, I know.
And the contribution they've made, the way that he's fallen in love with the club, clearly, the jumping into the fans last Saturday, I mean, it was great to see. And I don't know who it is on Twitter, but somebody said you can tell that he's never done this before, he's never reacted like that, and you can tell that he has a real feeling for the club. And the fact that we've got about a long-term deal. And also I remember saying when Ange Postecoglou left and there was all the fear over who he was going to come and take from Celtic, obviously he's taken nobody, but the one person out of all the players I was really worried about him taking was Maeda, because I was just like, why wouldn't you want to? I find it absolutely crazy that he didn't make a move for him, because why wouldn't you want to have a guy like that? And people laughed at me for saying, why would a Premiership team sign Dyson Maeda? And it's like, well, I think he's shown us all what an absolute powerful weapon that he is to have. And yes, okay, there's slight flaws in his game in terms of his composure at times when he gets into a position to cross or whatever, but put that to one side when you think of everything else he gives. And last night it was on display in full effect. And I mean, it was at half time, it was going on whatever we wanted it to be. And the weird thing is, do you remember we beat Kilmarnock 5-0 away at the start of, it must have been the start of, was it the start of last season? We beat them 5-0 away.
Was this the game, JP, where we absolutely motored into a lead in the first half? Is that the game you're talking about? And it was like, we'd missed a penalty, but we were 4-0 up.
It was August. It was definitely, it was because it was a summer's day. But we got the bus down, and me and my mate and a couple of mates went to the Glen Cairn Hotel, which is just along the ground. It's not far. And there was a balloon signage up from the night before that said Lauren's Hen Party. And we were like, well, we need to go and get a picture in front of that. And then somebody laughed and said, that'll come up in our memories in 10 years' time. We were like, why were we at Lauren's Hen Party? And I said, and I can't believe I didn't back it, and I can't believe I didn't back it last night. I said Lauren's Hen Party and 5-0 away to Kelly.
Oh.
And then we won 5-0. And then my mate went to the same hotel last night and texted me a video and said, Lauren's Hen Party in full swing. And there was a guy playing tunes with an acoustic guitar in that same room. And at that point, if I hadn't been so busy last night with the gig that I was doing, I probably would have stuck a tenner on 5-0, because
the signs were there.
It was a gift from my mate Mikey, and I should have taken it up. But
the signs were there.
Just happy that we put the two Kilmarnock losses and the draw to bed in spectacular fashion last night.
Yeah.
I think, and then obviously to get the prize at the end of it, which was the league title that has been precarious at times this season, was, whether I was there or not, didn't make it to Celtic Park either, because I just thought everybody would be gone by the time that I actually could get along there.
I was the same.
So I really, really, I'm just so glad that we put those demons to rest and won the league. We've won the league again. And
it's an incredible feeling.
It doesn't feel any less sweet than, in fact, it probably feels sweeter than most, given the we're going to win this and all that patter that you were hearing from elsewhere, and some of the stuff that you saw online from the usual suspects who love to take the mickey out of us, you, whatever, like clip us and all the rest of it. And it's just like, Clip this.
The thing with that, clip this. Lauren's hen party. I love it, JP. I wish you had put some money on it. Actually, yesterday before the game, we spoke a lot about the previous encounters because there was this feeling going in. I mean, even beyond this season, Brendan's not got a great record against Kilmarnock, which is strange when you consider this season how good a record he's got against Derek McInnes in his previous role as the manager of Aberdeen. We've gone into the game, wouldn't have envisaged 5-0, but I did predict 3 because that's kind of been my go-to figure in the last couple of months, 3-0. Went for 3, it was 3-0 at half-time. So Chris and I, who were covering the game, says, right, we're going to have to change our predictions here. And we went for 5 and we won 5. But again, I wouldn't even know how to put on a bet, to be honest with you. But 5-0 and we win the game. And we're going to be talking about the performance, the comments by Brendan Rodgers, the season as a whole. You were talking about clipping and criticising and all that. Listen, I love the patter, I love the crack, JP, but there's a grisly dark side to this. And the grisly dark side is, publishing somebody's home address on a Rangers forum. That's dark. That's sinister. Because that's what happened to me, 2 weeks ago, was it? A couple of weeks back. And it's just like, well, you're doing it for one reason. You're doing it so that people know where I live, obviously, with a view to, in the future, intimidating you, harassing you, all that kind of stuff. So that's the darker side, which is just beyond the pale. And I think the big thing for me, and I keep saying this, in terms of upbringing and all that, JP, getting brought up in schemes in and around Fife, not exclusively surrounded by Celtic fans, going to school, even though it was a Catholic school in the area, either in Pennacook, Sacred Heart, Holy Name at Oakley, St Columbus and Dunfermline. You're going to school with Rangers fans and Celtic fans, You then play football and you're travelling all over Europe sometimes for tournaments. Rangers and Celtic fans. You've worked with them. You've socialised with them. So I'm not going to say, and I never will, I'm never going to just have a big, broad brush and say they're all like this. Because they're not. They absolutely are not. I know good guys who support Rangers. It might shock people in the comments, but I do. Online, it's a completely different world. It's a different world online, JP. It's as if there is no comeback. You can do and say anything. I mean, publishing somebody's home address, really? That's completely unacceptable.
It's very, but I mean, it's the world that we live in today that things like that are suddenly deemed acceptable. Some things that people say are suddenly deemed acceptable. I mean, talk about comments that are made on this channel. Like sometimes you feel a bit paranoid about what you should or shouldn't say, or whether you should defend a player or not defend a player. And I just want to read this out because people keep receipts for certain points, and the 20-minute Tims were like, send us your receipts of things that people have said. Now, it's obviously we're looking for boastful patter from Rangers fans, but there's times where you look at the comments on this and you go, whoa, that's like people just go two-footed on you, and you kind of then start second-guessing yourself. And I've always just tried to sort of say what I actually think and what I actually feel, rather than being guided by someone else's opinion. Because I've never ever been like that in my life. Like if the enemy were telling me to listen to a band and it was like hammering it, I would probably step away from that band rather than I did it with Arctic Monkeys. I only got into Arctic Monkeys about 3 albums in because the enemy were proclaiming them to be the new Smiths, and I was like, good band, but they're not the new Smiths. But a guy wrote 7 months ago after, and I remembered this. A guy wrote after one of I think it was the Feyenoord game, so it looks like it was about November. And by a guy that's quite literate, he's not come out with it's full stops, commas, and it's not a rant. But JP's blind spot for Hart is utterly desperate. Hart will end their season in Europe and is already actively doing so. He is shot, and it's a disgrace. This is our keeper. Hart makes a few competent saves against domestic dross, and Paul John announces his good run of form. I'm sorry, but the goalkeeping situation will critically undermine their season. Forget everything else. I mean, really?
7 months ago, was that?
Aye, all I was saying at the time was that Joe Hart's not been as bad, and I'm not like as desperate to fling him out like as everybody else was. I didn't see that he'd done anything so bad. I mean, people were giving him a hard time for punching the ball out the box at one point, and then he does that against Rangers and he gets cheered, and it's just like, wow, man, really? And then it's a huge clamour for him to be player of the season, which I think would have been wrong because there's no question who should have been and is player of the year, and on all fronts, not just Celtic's player of the year. I mean, he proved last night. Again, made a mockery of these awards that are handed out.
Absolutely, JP. Absolutely.
You know, you don't do that. It's just mad. Matt O'Reilly could still score a hat-trick in the Scottish Cup final, and then where does that leave the people that have nominated Lawrence Shankland as Player of the Year? And I don't know about the writers' Player of the Year, but that's maybe still to come. But
who was the Motherwell guy that went away and got locked up the same night he won the award? Remember Michael Higdon? Yeah. Remember that one? That seemed a bit bizarre as well at the time. But you're right.
Was it because he was a top goal scorer or something like that? Because Adam Rooney was top goal scorer. Liam Boyce was top goal scorer. These guys have there's guys that have had like standout seasons where they've scored a lot of goals. But Lawrence Shankland's going to finish the season with no trophies. And is he going to get a move to a big club? I think there's only one club that really is in the mix to sign him. And even then, could they afford to prize him away from Hearts? I don't know. But just on the Joe Hart thing and just on people's comments in general, it's just like, I know that not everybody agrees and everything else, but I mean, utterly desperate. It's just like...
My take on Hart all season has been pretty consistent, JP. And I think he's had his best season in a Celtic jersey. And I've said that a few times now. Even Matt O'Reilly voted for him for Celtic's Player of the Year. And he was up there. He was in the top 3, no doubt about it. And you talk about some of the moments where he's made an absolutely critical save and we've won the points. And yes, you remember the assists, you remember the goals. Of course you do. That's what football's like. But Joe Hart has given us an assurance at the back when, even if you look at all the Kilmarnock games, did we even play the same defence twice? I'm going to check it. I've got them here, JP. I mean, on one occasion, Lagerbielke and Nawrocki. Yeah.
Nat Phillips played in the other one.
Nat Phillips, scored an OG. So he's had all this turmoil in front of him, if you like. And I think that there's been moments where his leadership qualities have been absolutely immense. And, he made his 700th club appearance against Rangers last week. And he probably does have a few years in him, but he's one of the guys that's decided to, do a Paul Weller and split up the jam when they're doing well. And that's what he's going to do.
Or a Cantona. I wonder if he went. Up. A Cantona was like 31 or 32 or something.
Early 30s. It was scary, but again, you don't see the fat Elvis, do you? You don't see the tapering off of a career. And I think Joe Hart for me has had his best season. And I was trying to explain it in the early part of the season because I think what we're trying to do when Brendan came in, we knew the style of play was going to be different. But it was to try and identify who was doing things differently within the team as well. And I think the inverted fullbacks, that was a massive change. That's not been the same. And then the goalkeeper with the ball at his feet. Now, I know that he plays a really high line, JP, and obviously you see him, midway through his own half a lot of the time when Celtic are attacking, etc. And he gives the centre-halves and the fullbacks a passing option. But we've not seen the same flaws to his game where he's taking too much time on the ball, he's losing the ball, he's kicking it into touch and all this kind of stuff because he's held on to it too long. So I think he's improved. I actually think this has been his best season, and not with hindsight. I think I've been pretty consistent with that throughout the season, JP.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, you look at the reception he got at the Player of the Year awards last Sunday when Matt O'Reilly called him out and he came up and said a few words and said, I'm normally comfortable in these situations, but I have to say right now, I don't feel comfortable because I'm standing in front of 11,000 people or whatever. But and then the adulation that he's got at the recent games, people were wanting the Player of the Year award to be given to him just because of how he celebrates at the end of a game, which maybe a bit of a stretch, but I didn't. And this is coming from someone who didn't really like Joe Hart before he came to Celtic. I had no real thoughts on him either way, other than he was just like an England player and a Man City player, and that's how I thought of him. I didn't think of him or really know about his character or anything like that. But you cannot deny the influence that he's had on and off the pitch at Celtic, and will be a massive, massive miss next season. Just in terms of like Matt O'Reilly asking him, like, is it like this everywhere? And Joe Hart's like, no, it's not. It's like, I mean, I obviously the wishful thinking would be that would then maybe lead him to have doubts about moving. But I think
I want to talk about that, JP. I think we need to talk about that, because last night you were talking about, obviously, for me, and I've said it, and I've said it time and time again, best player of the season, not just for Celtic, but in Scottish football. You look at the goals yesterday, right? Ida, it's an O'Reilly cross. So we opened the scoring first 5 minutes of the game. O'Reilly creates the goal. Second goal by Maeda. He wasn't involved in that directly. Third goal, James Forrest, and you're looking at that move as well. It was Ida to Maeda to Forrest, but by that point, Matt O'Reilly's running the game. He's orchestrating the pace of the game, and he scores the last two. So he gets 2 goals and an assist. That's been basically, the mark of Matt O'Reilly all season. When you look at, what did he score last season? 4 goals last season?
Was that all it was? No
single
way.
figures. Single figures.
I suppose he out the team because of Moy would have been.
And then the improvement has been sensational. But the point that I'm making, right, so he's asking Joe Hart, and Joe Hart obviously has had a career and a half, brilliant career, doing in one of the biggest leagues in the world, if you believe what you're told. Certainly one of the richest leagues in the world, one of the biggest box office leagues in the world, down in England. And Matt O'Reilly, I'm sure, is an ambitious guy. I don't know him. I've never had the pleasure of speaking to him. But when you listen to his interviews, JP, he's a bit different. I mean, he seems to have a view and a state of mind, and it's all about maximising everything, every single aspect of his game and his life and all that kind of stuff. So there is always going to be a point with a player like that. And that's why I think we need to celebrate James Forrest and Callum McGregor and all these guys. There's going to be a point where there's an offer and he fancies a challenge. Totally get it. So on the one hand, I'm thinking, right, I don't want a situation again where there's a player at the club where he's checked out. Now, it's natural, and it's happened to some phenomenal players in the past. I mean, let's be honest, it happened to Dembele. It happened to Edouard. It's just the way football is. And you need to be up here 100% tuned in to maximise what you're doing on the park. So listen, if he wants to leave, he goes. But the point I made yesterday was, right, all these figures are being thrown about, 25 million quid, JP, right? So we've heard the figures. What did Jota's money get us? What did it get us? Seriously. I'd had Jota back.
What did it get him?
It got him plenty. But then, in terms of financially, but
I mean, you're no way going to try and tell me. I mean,
he derailed his career, JP.
He had a better week at Celtic than the year he's had there.
Yeah,
he's had and I don't doubt that's the case. In terms of football, I'm sure he's swimming in money, and that's all very well and good. But it's not all about that, and I don't think it's all about that for Matt O'Reilly either. I just don't get that vibe from him. So yeah, the offers will be there, and then it's just about. Obviously, now we've got guaranteed Champions League football, so in your mind, you cast yourself back to thinking about when Andrew's been linked with Spurs, and you're going, just stay for another crack at the Champions League and then go. And then you look at Ange Postecoglou and where he is right now. Again, someone who's probably been financially well rewarded in this year at Spurs, but the anger that was coming at him.
Is he happy? Is he happy, GP?
Exactly. I'm not saying that like we're the best thing that can ever happen to you in your life and there's nothing better outside the Celtic, but it does make you realise that. Look at the Jota's situation. Look at Ange's situation where he's playing in front of a crowd that wanted to lose.
Despicable behaviour.
Instead of getting champion. I mean, I don't know what the percentage of that fan base, because I think someone asked him in the lead up, like what percentage, and he went, a proportion. Like, tell me what's a proportion. And he was getting annoyed in the lead up to the game. So God knows how annoyed he was actually during the game when there's fans singing, "Are you watching Arsenal?" and all that. That's wild to me. Like, absolutely wild.
JP, they can call us tin pot. They can call the Scottish game tin pot all they like, right? But see all that patter and the half and half scarves and the Tourist League and all that nonsense. I'll take Scottish football. Thank you very much. I'm not interested in any of that.
Did you watch Guillaume Balaguer's real video that he did of his day?
I've not watched it. I want to sit down and pay attention to that.
As he's walking down the front of the Celtic Way, there's a guy selling scarves. And Guillaume Balaguer actually says to him, he went, "No half and half scarves." And he goes, "Not today, no."
The thing is, am I a contradiction, right? Because I keep going about, and we'll talk about what next with Celtic and hitting a ceiling in Scottish football and taking your football elsewhere and all the rest of it. And then I'm slagging off the English game. Jim Orr made a great point, and he made it a long time ago in Acsom about, right, what happens if Celtic were? Let's just, for a moment, think about it. What if Celtic were to join that league? What would the club become? Would you lose a bit of your soul, JP? This is the thing. This is the massive dilemma. Because I think as you go through your life, I'm in my mid-40s, right? And when you look back when you're younger and you think that the important things are the wealth and all that kind of stuff. But you learn as you get a wee bit older that it's absolutely worthless. Happiness. So Ange Postecoglou is not happy. He doesn't appear happy to me. And that, for me, is far, far more important than a big pile of dough.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I don't earn millions of pounds in my job. I love my job. That's why I do it. It's why I'm passionate about it. It's why I don't ever really feel when I'm getting up to go to work that, oh God, I've got to go to work. Admittedly, last night was it was a bit of a test, but at the same time, it's like I'm not going to like mope about the place just because I can't go to a football match. I still enjoyed my job last night. It was a really good gig. The guy was great. Patrick Joney was his name. A songwriter from Brooklyn. Won a guitar competition when he was 16 that got him a tour with Buddy Guy. And he toured with Buddy Guy, which is a huge deal. Guy's a legend. So that was great last night. And obviously the icing on the cake was the result. But I mean, seeing Ange, people will be like, oh, who cares? Serves him right, blah, blah, blah. You'll get all that. And there's people that seem to have it in for him. You see some things online where you're like, wow, that's changed quite quickly, given the fact that everyone kind of always sort of said about Brendan Rodgers, if he'd waited till the end of that season and then left, he would have left a hero, even if he had gone to Leicester in the summer of 2019. It was 2019, wasn't it? But yeah, I mean, it's all about making the right decisions in your career, and I'm sure that Matt O'Reilly, when that decision time comes, he will make the right one, given that he makes the right decisions most of the time in football games. So I think he's the type of guy that will make the right decision football-wise as well. I can't foresee a future where when Matt O'Reilly leaves Celtic, he ends up in an unhappy place. I would highly doubt that. But it's kind of tinged with sadness because you're watching it last night going, these are probably the last days of Matt O'Reilly in a Celtic shirt, and he'll go on to become a very, very storied midfielder in Europe probably. And we'll recount these times of being able to see him play in a Celtic shirt and be like, wow, we saw Matt O'Reilly play for Celtic. Just like we did with Keith Tierney, Mr. Dembele when he was at Rio, scoring against Man City in the Champions League and all that. And you're like, well, twice he did it. So yeah, things like that. You're just kind of like, well, you just accept. Van Dijk at Liverpool. I saw Virgil van Dijk play for Celtic, and he's will be remembered as one of the best centre halves ever, probably.
Yeah, he will, JP. Absolutely right. And I remember, without much backlift, the way he was able to spray that ball around Celtic Park, and you and I both have had the absolute privilege and pleasure of being on that pitch. And you try to kick a ball that far.
Oh my God!
And he just used to do it effortlessly. Unbelievable.
Start running at that halfway line. You better be ready to go the whole way because it's such a massive distance. My mate who was playing up front in that charity game was like, I've not got the legs for this second half. He was like, I'm just going to hold it up and lay it off for you. And the next thing I scored a hat-trick. And
how many minutes did you get?
I got 10 minutes in the first half at either, I think, right centre half, because a guy's wife had gone into labour. So he pulled out. So that meant that his half got dished out amongst the subs. So I got 10 minutes in the first half. And then in the second half, I got the full 45, which is what I'd raised the money for. So played number 8, or a hybrid of an 8 and a 10.
I mean, listen, I was a bit sneaky.
By the way, if anybody's watching that either played with or played against us in that game, I would love to hear your memories of that. If that would be amazing. I mean, there is a chance. I don't know, but we our team, the away team, won 11-1, and Joe Miller was our manager / player.
Super Joe.
Danny McGrain was the manager / player in the opposition team.
Incredible. Tommy Boyd was the team that I played for as manager against Simon Donnelly's team.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, I played a blinder no in the park, but to get minutes, I basically put my position down as left back, because nobody likes to play left back, right? Mm-hmm. And I got 70 minutes. My number on my back was 7-1 in homage to Neely Mokin. There's loads of great comments coming through, and let's work our way through them now. We've got Green Lichty, Sair Heed, but the smile remains as big as ever. And that avatar is the logo of my St. Columbus High School in Dunfermline that I went to. So I don't know if that's where you got it, Green Lichty, but there you go. Ian Roy, our players will want to play on Saturday. Just hope Brendan Rodgers makes plenty of changes and rests our hardcore of winners. He's worked hard to find out who the hardcore are. That's why James Forrest wasn't playing. I mean, he wanted to give the wingers that had come in, Jason. And I thought for a spell that Palmer was grasping that, and then he fell away pretty badly. Yang, just flashes. Kuhn, I'm on the fence. I'm not want to write him off. I want him to get a pre-season under his belt, see how he develops. And then we eventually go to Forrest. Now, you can clip this one for a few months ago, because you said, I don't know which show it was on, you said Forrest would play a pivotal part in us winning this league.
It wasn't based on anything other than the knowledge that Brendan Rodgers trusted him before even when he wasn't playing him. I just knew that he had the trust of the manager, knew that he was someone that could be relied on to get goals in big moments. He did it under Ange. You could say, oh, it was only a semi-final against St Johnstone. Still a semi-final. It still was the only goal, I think, of that game. Was it not 1-0? And it was his goal. I can't. Maybe I'm blurring my memory on that, but I'm fairly sure it was a narrow game anyway. It wasn't like he scored the 5th in a 5-0 rout or anything. And I guess just with James Forrest, I'm really pleased for. He seemed to have received so much stick and so much, at times, hatred as well. Like, completely bizarre to me that you would have so much hate for a guy that's done so much. But I think this title victory, because I mean, at the start of the season when he got his testimonial, everybody was just like, "Why is this happening? You know, he's not going to do anything this season," and it's kind of like whatever. But the fact is that he's contributed contributed significantly at the time when we most needed it, and I really hope that changes the opinion long term of people that have had criticism of him, and they don't just sort of forget about this last few months where he's come into the team and really provided that kind of calm, composure, important goals. The semi-final goal against Aberdeen was huge, and obviously the goals at Dundee, goal last night, playing really well last Saturday against Rangers, might not have scored, but definitely merited his starting berth against them. And yeah, you should be recognised. I mean, look at the trophy haul. He's now, what is he, 3 away from...
If he wins the Scottish Cup, he'll be 1 behind Bobby Lennox as the most decorated Celtic player in the history of the club. That is astonishing. In the modern day, JP, where we've spoken about Jota, the carrot, and all that, it's so difficult at some point. And there's been interest in Forrest during his time at Celtic. that he's sitting here 15 seasons in, and he's going to be second only to the great Bobby Lennox in terms of trophies won. It's astonishing. And you're right. The kind of attitude, and I'm not saying from everybody, because it's not everybody, towards Jamesy this season was, and it's like, I think Brendan became laser focused. I'm talking like I know him. Brendan Rodgers became laser focused at some point. And like you said there, it was like, we need to have 11 guys on that park I can trust. Now, technically, they might not be the greatest, a la Liam Scales might not be the greatest centre half in the world. But Brendan Rodgers knows he can trust them, right? And now, that might seem like a contradiction. What I mean by that is Nawrocki never showed us enough that we could trust him. He might be a great player. I don't know yet. Lagerbielke, Rodgers definitely doesn't trust him, right? Because he's basically, he's in Siberia right now, isn't he? He's in the car share. Although I seen him celebrating the game last night. So I think he went for the tried and tested. And you looked at that starting 11 that started the game against Rangers, not one new signing from this season. And I made the point, that team that started against Rangers could have started for Ange Postecoglou. All those guys were at the club 16 months previously. That went on that park and basically wrapped up the league. I know mathematically we did it last night, but the game against Rangers was huge. And had Ange gone into a game against Rangers playing that side, it would have been a grossly under strength side, by the way, if you think about it. But we got the job done. Now, a couple of wee points when you mentioned Matt O'Reilly. I sent you a message last night, and I said I think he's up there. He's one of the best midfielders I've seen at Celtic. Now, I know the emotion of the night and winning the league and it's 5-0 and it's a great performance and all that, JP. But, I've slept on it and he is. I've got a greatest 11. I think we've all got it in our head of players that we've seen playing for Celtic. And the midfield position, by the way, is blessed with some incredible players. Matt O'Reilly's in the discussion for me now. He is. I'm going to have to look at my starting 11, my greatest 11. O'Reilly's in there. He has been, and particularly this season, one of the best all-round midfielders I've seen in the hoops.
Yeah, the more that I was left to kind of stew on him not getting Player of the Year and this whole narrative of the dip in form, I actually went back and studied all, because somebody had replied to, I put a tweet out which listed the things that I remember, the standout things that I remember that Matt O'Reilly's done. And remember, you can only fit so much into a tweet, or maybe that's changed since that guy got his hands on it. But last minute winner at Fir Park, World Day at Tynecastle, past the Kyogo versus Atletico Madrid, followed by a Man of the Match performance, a Man of the Match award. World Day at McDermott Park. Remember that one where he hit it on the instep and just went right into the top bag? Unbelievable. Nenka Ibrox. I mean, to do that, it was, and then the wee kind of just smile and celebration at their fans who must have been absolutely livid. And then to see this really good-looking, majestic guy just sort of jogging off, smiling, must have been like...
With his socks. He wears his socks in a certain way that made that kit look brilliant this season.
By the way, I don't mind... See, if you've got the chops, I don't mind you wearing luminous boots or socks down at your ankles or anything like that. There's the folk that do that haven't got it to back it up, but he's got it to back up. Clinical goal versus Aberdeen at Hampden that should have probably won us the game given the time that it was scored. Past the Kyogo versus Hearts, absolutely ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
Left foot, on a sixpence for him. The goal on Saturday against Rangers, which was so similar to Stuart Armstrong's goal when you see the two reflected.
I think someone put them side by side, didn't they?
Did, and the build-up play is almost exactly the same. It's like Rodgers is just like I don't know, copied his own homework. 16 goals, 17 assists, and then I put and more to come, and there has been more to come. He's now on 18 goals and 18 assists, and then the dip in form, and I was like, and a guy replied and went, vanished for months after New Year, vanished for months, and then I look back and I'm like, and I listened to the post-match that I did with Melly at Pittodrie after the 1-1 game when Kuhn scored, right? And I said on that, I was like, Matt O'Reilly was poor today. Now, that really is probably one of the only real games that I think he was poor. If you're going to label the 1-1 draw against Kilmarnock Matt O'Reilly's at fault for that. I don't really think you can. I mean, we saw how the goal was conceded, and it wasn't his fault. Yes, he didn't score. I think he had a goal disallowed, maybe, but either way, in the Hearts away game at Tynecastle, he was still brilliant, despite the fact that he'd been suffering from pneumonia and hadn't really slept the night before the game, which maybe people don't know about. So this vanished for months. It's like, wow, really?
It didn't happen.
Like
that did not happen.
It didn't happen. It was like a few games where the team didn't play well. It was a bit rocky again, similar to sort of late November, early December. But you analyse his performance over the whole season, and it's absolutely frightening.
And I would say as well, you see in the spell that people are talking about where the form dipped, and he spoke about it, and he spoke about that period, right? I argued that he was carrying the midfield at that point. I argued that he was doing a lot of the legwork for people who weren't 100% fit.
GP, there was no Hatate, so there was no legs in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he was. I think he was doing the work for others within that midfield. The chopping and changing in the midfield probably didn't help until Brendan Rodgers realised who his go-to guys were. I think I would have, it's not with hindsight, I would have always said Hatate, O'Reilly and McGregor, but that's not how we started the season against Ross County. We started the season with Turnbull in the starting 11. So, I think he's been absolutely off the scale. But we were talking about the realisation that perhaps he will leave the football club. And we're talking about Europe and recruitment and all this kind of stuff, right? Here's a wee thing to consider. And I'm going to go back to a show I did a while back with Colin Watt, who was on a Celtic State of Mind for a long time.
I saw him on Saturday, by the way.
Did you see him?
I saw him in the Duke bar after the game, yeah.
Was he enjoying himself?
I ran up to him shouting Rodgers out.
That's true, yes. He was.
He took it well.
He was calling for Rodgers to leave. Thankfully, that never happened on a Celtic State of Mind. Here's a list of players that we've cashed in on, right? And I know, and it's multi-caveated this, because if they're unhappy, etc., if we don't make the Champions League money, sometimes we need to sell a player. I get it, right? Fraser Forster, Jeremy Frimpong, Kieran Tierney, Christopher Ayer, Virgil van Dijk, Victor Wanyama, Matt O'Reilly, because he's part of this discussion, Stuart Armstrong, Jota, Edouard, Dembele. Now, that's 11 players, right? 11 players who have gone for big, big money from this football club. And I think when you are selling and there's a model and you're constantly dominating Scottish football, which we are, there's no doubt about it. I put a stat out last night. Somebody actually said I missed the Scottish Cup, so we're even more dominant than I thought we were, right? But over the last 25 years, JP, we have dominated Scottish football. So I understand why the club would say there's an asset. This is part of our model. We're going to make 20 million off of Van Dijk with the sell-on included. We're going to do the same with Frimpong. I get it. Totally understand it. But if you want to do something in Europe, what we've shown from that list of 11 players is that in terms of recruitment, we can recruit quality. And we have done over a number of years, JP. And imagine all those guys, because they're all still playing, correct me if I'm wrong. It's not as if I'm cobbling a team together from the 80s. Oh, McStay would have looked great with O'Reilly. This is a team of the moment players who might not be at their best right now. I think there could come a point, right, looking at the new Champions League structure, where you get your recruitment right for 2 or 3 windows. And by the time the cycle comes round, this O'Reilly cycle, which seems to be coming round in the pre-season now, JP, by the time that comes round, you've got enough of that type of quality that I've just read out there to actually do something beyond the domestic game. I never think that we've done it quite right. We've always been lacking in a department somewhere on the pitch. We think, oh, what a team we've got, but we could do better there. And that's where we are now on a couple of different areas. But that team there, where's the lack of quality in that side? And every one of them played for a number of seasons at Celtic Park. And every one of them went for big money, I get it. But what aside that is, imagine naming the prime, JP. My point is, imagine naming the prime, where would they rank in a Champions League group? Yeah, and they all played for Celtic. It's no fantasy football. I think that there comes a point where you get the luck of the draw in terms of the players coming through. So you might have a core group of the likes of Forrest a couple of years ago, although he's playing brilliant right now, Callum McGregor and a few others. your recruitment is right, and it has to be right, and it's got to be right for a number of windows now for that cycle to finally somebody that we might buy this summer, JP, in 3 years' time could be the Matt O'Reilly. Everybody wants to buy him. But by that time, we've got the quality in the side where we can progress. Some people think that's pie in the sky. You cannot compete in Europe. Tell me, how much did that 11 cost us to buy?
Exactly. But that's the thing when people are obviously very cognizant of the riches that are definitely going to be in our bank account come the end of this season, with or without a sale of Matt O'Reilly. But the knee-jerk thing is to then be like, all right, if we sell Matt O'Reilly for 25 million or whatever it is, how are we going to reinvest that? We're not going to go out and spend £15 million on a player, but we spent £1.5 million on Matt O'Reilly. So it's all about being just accurate and spot on with your recruitment, and it doesn't need to. I mean, I do think that I want, as a season ticket holder, I want to see us spend money like we spent on Carter Vickers and Jota, in that sense, where you're buying somebody for a fee, where you're going to get 40 games out of them a season, and they're going to contribute to every competition, and you're not just sort of buying them for the Champions League, or you're buying them to be someone like Carter Vickers or someone like Jota. That's the sort of the dream scenario, to have that in every position. Then you've got a team that can be competitive in the Champions League, you would think, especially in this new format where, by the looks of things and the structure of what's been put out so far of the potential pot placings, we'd be pot 3, and it doesn't look as scary as it has done in the past when you see the pots, when you just go, oh God, we've got absolutely no chance. When we get groups like when you've just got like Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich and everything else, and you're just like, well, what chance have we got of getting anything out of that? I mean, these teams are spending hundreds of millions of pounds, but if we come up against teams that have, or clubs that have got similar or less money to spend than we have, then that's potential for progression, and in that tournament. And I believe that Europa League isn't an option. I heard you saying last night that's not an option as a drop down.
There's no parachute into another tournament. Yeah,
so be it. But
the thing is, I mean, what would be tremendous, right? And I think some people might not even think this is realistic, JP, to become a team that is trying to reach that middle ground where you get another playoff, and it's a two-legged playoff, as Sean pointed out last night. I think it's 90-24 in the league group stage of the Champions League. The league stage, is it getting called now, where you play your 8 games against 8 different sides, 4 home, 4 away. And if you can fit yourself, if you can get enough to finish off at between 9th and 24th, you get your playoff, which is in effect our last 16. So, the last 16 has seemed quite far away from us in recent times.
Mm-hmm.
That list of players, there's 11 players. How many players did we sign this season? We signed 11. Let's sign the 11 right players. I don't even think we should be signing that amount. I actually think we need 8 players at the moment in this team. But if you sign the right players, JP, it's not an exact science, but we've got to do it better. Then it looks as though we can push on from this. Loads of great points coming through. I really want, because JP and I could do a 2.5-hour show on a Thursday, but JP's got work to go to and stuff like that. By the way, Colin,
day off today, thankfully.
Is it? Superb.
Yeah.
That's right. Tommy Burns took the team to Seamill before the 95 Cup final. So it's that tradition of like Burns coming through, at the time that he came through and Steen was still at the club. Because I think Tommy made his debut in 75, I believe. So, and knowing that that's the traditions of the club. And I just loved it last night. It was a touch of class from Rodgers.
Brilliant. I didn't know that was happening. And then the next thing I saw the pictures, and really, really, really good. Quite weird that we were playing Kilmarnock on that day of all days, on the anniversary of his passing. I was thinking about him last night. What a guy! You hear people talking about him, and I think it was who was it? It was was it James McFadden? It was in the studio where. Oh, it was with Neil Wennon and Chris Boyd, and Neil Wennon was just talking about saying he was just a funny guy, and It was like the times that he came through to our night in Edinburgh. He was funny. Like he would get up on the mic and he would, rip the committee members. Like he would take the mickey out and Nick would. He took it in good grace, and it just became somebody that you knew. But then you're like, wait a minute, this is Tommy Burns of Celtic. Like this is a really, really special and important person associated with this club, even although back then the closest memories that you had of him really were the Scottish Cup final and like Rangers winning 9 in a row, and that was obviously he fell at that hurdle, and you felt for him because you know how much that meant to him. But then the fact that it was stopped, even though he wasn't there, there. Oh God, I was going to say he's there and he's always there. He is, but he was, even though he wasn't at the club, he is part of the club. He still is part of the club. He's part of the fibre of Celtic, and he always will be for the rest of the time. And when he won the double, he said that I'll be in. When people look back on this team in 100 years' time, I'll be in the team.
I know.
And
he was in tears. He was in tears. See, the thing, I can't remember, so apologies who brought this up. Can't remember who said it, but the team that stopped the 10, right? Two of the mainstays of that team, two of the guys that scored the goals against Rangers in the New Year's Day game were identified by Tommy Burns. They were identified. They were in, and it was described as a filing cabinet. That shows you how we used to do business. They were in the filing cabinet as prospective signings. Tommy Burns wanted day 2 players. They were identified by his recruitment team, his scouting team. And eventually the deal was done later on. And they played a massive part. I mean, love or loathe them. But I think Burley scored 16 goals that season from midfield. It was
unreal. Scored the first in that 2-0 game when Lambert scored. Everyone remembers the Lambert screamer into the top bin, which obviously was one of the best goals ever in that fixture. But Craig Burley broke the deadlock with, not a amazing goal, but it was still a great finish, and it was important because we couldn't get breakthroughs against them in previous games, and the longer games went at 0-0 with them in the past, they had players or a player that could unlock our defence, like Brian Laudrup or Gascoigne or whoever, one of those. But it was good to hear Brendan Rodgers talking about him last night as well, saying that he thought it was really a nice touch for the fans to have the banner for Tommy, and obviously he knew him. I don't know how well, but he knew him. But massively pleased for Brendan Rodgers as well, because we've spoken about it before. But when he came back, or when it was announced he was coming back, I was like, okay, I welcome this. This makes sense. Yes, it did feel a bit uneasy because not everybody was on the same page, and when not everybody is on the same page at Celtic Park, it is an uncomfortable place. Like I spoke earlier on about the booing that was happening. I didn't subscribe to that, especially of Santa Claus. This whole thing is we booed Santa. I was like, well, wait a minute, don't include me in your we, because I didn't boo him, and I didn't boo the team when we dropped points. Or
I would never boo Santa. See that year I got an Amiga 500.
I put that's a vintage Santa decoration in homage. But
we've got to play with that. We've got to play with that though for the Christmas advert this year. It's got to be.
I mean, it's a gimme, innit?
An open goal, eh? It really is.
Sure, if the guys around on Saturday, that he would be welcomed to be part of the celebrations. That would be hilarious.
Here's one for you, JP, with your love of music. Ian Conroy last night suggested, he's a pally Bobby Bluebell, and he suggested that the Bluebells play Young at Heart as a tribute to Joe Hart before the game against St Mirren, and they're up for it as well. So might drop an email to
just back to Brendan Rodgers briefly, like the way that he came out with the machine gun after the game last weekend, he was just like, I've been treated like a novice since I came back here. It's not my best, but I've never actually tried to do a Brendan Rodgers before. I'm not as good as Paul Sheridan.
Sheridan, I sent you that voicemail. How good is that?
Yeah, I get a few of them every now and then, just out of the blue.
McElvaney, that's one of his favourites.
The musings of Paul Sheridan as Brendan Rodgers is quite good. But yeah, just really happy for him, because I think he he's always talking about learning. Got to learn, and like he's become a better manager this season as a result of all
I'd agree with that.
all these hurdles that he's had to deal with, whether it's being called a misogynist, whether it's been questioning on his tactics, questioning on why he's not picking players, and
a dinosaur. He was called a dinosaur.
Yeah, and it's just you park everything that's went before and just concentrate on this season, and it must be so satisfying to be him right now. So satisfying to be able to actually come back in May and say, well, to those of you that have got any doubts, I'll see you in May. And he's won the league, and folk will be like, of course he's won the league, like he's inherited a treble winning squad. No, he didn't. It was a fragmented squad, and it's been fragmented all season when you look at the amount of games that the big players have missed.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's also tweets saying we were humiliated in Europe. I wouldn't say we were humiliated in Europe. I was at 5 out of those 6 Champions League games, and the one that I didn't go to was the one where we were humiliated. I didn't feel like we were humiliated. And
down to 10. We showed against them at home. And I know the away tie is different, JP, but we showed that we could go toe-to-toe at home against Atletico Madrid, a very good side. How far did they get in the competition?
Semi-final.
Very good side.
I think it was.
And we were down to 10 men, early doors. And it's the player that you were speaking about before. The influence of Maeda was lost. So, no, I don't think we were embarrassed. Absolutely not. I wanted us to build on what we did last year. But because of everything that happened with the loss, obviously, the manager in the first instance, some key players, JP. And I said at the beginning of the season, and by the way, I get loads wrong, but at the beginning of the season, I said I do not agree with signing 9 players. You do not bring 9 players into a treble-winning team because I think it can disrupt the team. It really can, because, they 9 guys, how many of them have got the mentality? How many of them know how to win a league over this amount of games, JP? How, to play for a club where drawing a league game is not good enough, going back to the club getting booed, the team getting booed this season because we drew against St Johnstone. That's what you're coming into. Now, 1 or 2 of them, you can carry them to a degree until they get up to that level where they understand what it is to play for this football club. 9 of them, no chance. We should never do that. And here's me talking about bolstering the team with 8, but hopefully it will be 8 of quality. That's right, and I didn't mean to do it, Vert, but I did. Yeah, I fitted Grizzly in when I was talking about the Bears online and publishing home addresses. But Kevin Graham, you're right. For someone to repost it, knowing that it could cause you damage, and there being a Celtic fan that done it, totally unacceptable. Plunge asks why my home address is common knowledge. To be honest with you, Plunge, you could give me somebody's name and I could find out their address in 48 hours. Anybody who's on voters' roll, the land register, company's house, anybody's findable, really. It's just having the mentality to actually go out and do it. Not just find it, JP, then post it. I know who edits that site and I know where he lives as well. I'm not going to post it anywhere.
No.
I know the person who reposted it thinking that was funny to get a few likes. I know where he lives as well. I'm not going to post it anywhere. But it's easy to find, unfortunately. Absolutely shocking. You should contact the police. See, the worst part of it, Thomas, the police will do nothing about it because it is not a direct threat. And being proactive doesn't really come into their remit these days, unfortunately. But don't worry, we're all good. We're nice and safe.
Be happy.
Don't worry, be happy. This is a question. If Lauren's out there, JP, what was the details of this again? I wonder if she's still married. Or even if she got married, who knows? After that party.
It was an absolute gift, a gift horse last night for me to back that 5-0, and I should have done it. I'm absolutely raging with myself. But but also, just back to Brendan Rodgers, I thought at the time that him coming back was an apology, or his way of an apology, because he wanted to make amends. He wanted to correct his standing in Celtic's history. And what a way to do it this season. And what an opportunity still to further cement that reputation by doing the business on the 25th of May. Because, I mean, if there's still people after that after he's negotiated his way through this season, if there's still people after that want him gone, then he'll never be able to change their mind. never. I mean, he could win the Champions League, and I think those people would still be like, "Nah, he's a rat. Get him out," or "Don't trust him." Like Robert replied drunkenly to my tweet last night because I shared the tweet that I put out at the start of the season, the day that he signed. I had a picture with him in the foyer at Celtic Park a few seasons ago, and I put, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." And he replied going, "Oh, I'll maybe start trusting him if he's still with us in June 2025 or whatever." I'm like, seriously, man? Come on. Like, how can you have this? I mean, I get it to an extent, but there's absolutely no way he's going to do the same again to us that he did before. I just don't see that happening. I think he's back. He's happy. He's clearly talked about how much he loves living in this part of the world and how at this time of your life that's an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully all within the club are on the same page as him when it comes to recruitment, because that's the biggest challenge that he'll face this summer, is to get the right players in. But I wouldn't bet against it happening, and that's a worrying sign for the rest of the league.
You think about domination. That's what we've been running with today. We'll keep writing our own story. The last 25 years, we have absolutely dominated Scottish football, JP, by writing our own story. Whatever happens elsewhere, they need to deal with that. You can't say, "Oh, right, you're only dominating because this club went into liquidation." No, Celtic are dominating because we have built a model that works. We're a really, really well-run football club. We've got a stadium that gives you the financial advantage season on season. I think we should start looking at maybe increasing that capacity as well.
If we do, in the 90s, we were in the ring, but we weren't landing any punches. We were on the ropes for pretty much the whole of the 90s.
Yeah.
So
and the thing is, JP, there might have been moments like that in the past, had we not produced so many good footballers, which we did. We always produced very, very good footballers through our system, bringing them through homegrown players. That dried up in the 90s. So even if you had another clutch, a Peter Grant, a Paul McStay, a Roy Aitken, a Tommy coming through, that might have seen us through that tricky patch, but they weren't there in the 90s. We just didn't have the same quality. And when we did get money, borrowed money, we spent it poorly and we brought in the wrong players. And everything just caught up with a board that were inept. They weren't business people. They had no entrepreneurial flair. And it came close. It came close, as we know. But yeah, we're absolutely, if you're counting trophies and all the rest of it, count away. I'm just looking at where we are in the here and now. I'm not looking at past glories to try and say, "Oh, but we are," like Chris Boyd said the other night, still won the most. It was embarrassing.
Sutton gave it a year. That was brilliant.
I know. And then the same guy, as Celtic are on the park last night celebrating, he's sitting with his back to the pitch. He's employed by the broadcaster covering the game, and he's not even looking to come up with any kind of theme to then discuss. The career of Joe Hart, the future of Matt O'Reilly, the return of Brendan Rodgers, and how well he can wear that grey suit. No one pulls off a grey suit like Brendan Rodgers, JP.
He was doing the nine toes dance as well.
Brilliant. And by the way, I've just got this vision. He's got a walk-in wardrobe as Brendan, isn't he? And it's just all the same suit.
American style.
All the same tone of grey. Right. And if one of them's slightly out and it's a different Pantone, now replace it, get a new one. That's Brendan, meticulous, and hopefully he can bring another double, which would be our 7th double in the last 24 years. Unbelievable domination of Scottish football. JP and I could talk all day about it. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you for an hour. Anybody who wants to come and join me, Ewan Martin, Jim Orr, Chris McElwain, a.k.a. Double Denim, Paddy Lavery, Joe Miller and Peter Grant for a wee party in Dunoon tomorrow night, a title-winning party. A couple of tickets left, not many. Link under the video.
If I wasn't DJing my wee cousin's 30th in Camlin near Falkirk, then...
That's nearly Mockin land. That is nearly Mockin land.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever told you, but my uncle Adam's dad went to school with John Slidden.
Right.
And may or may not know. Is that Neely's? That's Neely's nephew, isn't it?
So young Neely's cousin. Yeah.
Aye. So yeah, I used to see him at mass all the time. Went to school with him, and was pretty upset when he passed away. So I'm doing that tomorrow. Otherwise, I would have been in Dunoon for only the second time in my life. But
I can't wait to see it. I feel it's
it'll be a great night. I mean, obviously the '88 season's my year dot. It was the anniversary of the Scottish Cup final the other day, and I was thinking back. There's only times in your life where you kind of like go, and you actually home in on that moment, and you look at the picture. I was looking through some of the pictures, and I was like, wow, man, like I can totally remember that day. It was absolutely scorching
vividly.
hot. I remember just deciding to watch that game with my dad, and then the next thing, like I said, Kevin Gallagher scored early on, and I think because of that, I saw Celtic as the underdog, and I wanted Celtic to win. So when the drama unfolded and McAvenny scored the equaliser and then the winner, it wasn't really about anything to do with the club. It was just that one game, and then that sparked me to want to find out more. And obviously my dad had no skin in the game, but worked in Rutherglen and had got to know both sets of supporters, and I think he was quite keen for me to be a Celtic fan over them, if that's what the team that I was going to choose. So he took me to Celtic Park. Only a month or two later. No, 3 months later. It was September '88, and then I got the bug, and it's never left me. And here I am, all these years later, talking to you on a podcast about Celtic. It's an obsession. It's a passion. It's something that is a constant in your life, and moments like last night and moments like Saturday are what you live for, and to be able to like be with your pals and know that your pals have shared that same passion, but have come from a different angle on it, whether it's their dad that's passed it down or whatever. Everyone's got a Celtic story, haven't they? It's not all cut and dried. But yeah, it'll be a good day on Saturday.
Yeah, we've all got that state of mind, JP. It will be. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. We were up at 1,800 strong there on a Thursday afternoon, and I didn't see many Union Jacks. In fact, I never saw any emojis, none of them. Thank you all for getting involved. Give us a big thumbs up on the video if you're watching on YouTube. And all that's left for me to say, John Paul Mason, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.